Once I realized that I was really into, like, it's called visual design, right? Just aesthetic. I just really loved order, and even when I was little, I could be in the grocery store and I'd love like organizing the boxes and like bringing them up front if things were pushed back. I just like tidiness, and I always like cleanliness. And so once I really started to understand that there's art to that, or that there's like it can be a medium that you can follow, or it could have been a degree that I could have pursued had I known. I started finding people online, and I started getting involved in like social media thing. At the time, it was things like, Tumblr was big back then, DeviantArt. There was a site called Forest, and a little bit later called Dribble, Behance. All these like social media platforms were kind of popping up, and people were showing not only their work, but their process. And so seeing like these case studies that people were putting together of like these like sketches, and that junky sketch turns into a little bit better of a sketch, and so on and forth, I realized like I can do that. Like I can make a shitty sketch, and I can turn that sketch into something a little bit better and a little bit better and a little bit better, and I can carve away at it. Because I've never had like a drawing hand where I can just make something, right? And I thought that's what you had to do when you were an illustrator or an artist or whatever. And so seeing the internet and seeing, my contemporaries, and I think that was another thing too, was like following people that were making art today. Illustration is art with purpose, I guess maybe would be one simple way to put it. So seeing all that stuff online, reading about it, understanding the purpose, and I think kind of checked some of that brain of that engineering for me too, that I had purpose and stuff like that. I had so much fun seeing everybody else's work, seeing their process. I could mimic it, copy it, rip it off. And I would do that during the week, during my day job. At night, I would just figure out something that I wanted to copy, and I'd figure out how to copy it with the tools that I had. And I would do that for weeks and weeks and weeks and months, until then all of those things that I was learning from copying, I go back into my sketchbooks when I was, in high school or college, just doodles, and see how can I kind of merge those two things together to make my own art. And then there's more to that, but then I started sharing it online, and that's kind of how it all started snowballing and rolling. But the internet is pretty much the absolute like point of it all, where it all kind of started to shift for me. Today, it's always like a brief, and fortunately for me, I'm not usually coming up with ideas out of nowhere. It's usually an email comes in, somebody needs something done, they have a specific ad campaign they're running, or a character they're trying to design for a product, and those kinds of things. So, I get a brief, and then I basically just need my laptop and my brain, and for me, I need a ton of time. Like, it's usually, I overstate this, I'm sure, but I often say it's like, it's 70% in my brain first, working it out, writing ideas, thinking about it, taking it offline, going skateboarding, like those kinds of things are really what help me solve the problem. And then it's a matter of making it once I've kind of figured it out. The internet for me has been really important. I think me getting a head start of it, 10 years ago was really important. I don't know how to handle starting new and fresh today. All I can say is sharing process is extremely important, and I've seen it work. Being transparent is really important, and I've seen it work. Authenticity, those kinds of things that even brands will pretend to say, like even if you ask, whatever, Patagonia, like it's been authenticity, and everybody, people want to see the human. Yeah, we all say that, but like there's being authentic on the internet, and there's being authentic on the internet, and there's being like weirdly authentic on the internet. It's like finding all those different ways. Like you don't want to be all this cringy of like sharing every single thing that happened to you when you break up with your partner. Being human online, sharing often, I think authentic also comes in the way of like, if I'm gonna comment and say that I love somebody's work, I'm gonna really mean it, because you know how many comments everybody gets, and it's like, cool, check out my work. But then there's a nice way of emailing somebody like, yo, I've been a fan of yours for a really long time. Can I buy you pizza, and we Zoom and you eat the pizza, and like I'm willing to pay for your time, and I just would love to. Those kinds of ways are great ways to meet people. A strong strength somebody can find is learning how to ask the right questions for a brief. Years ago, when I was a little bit more green, I would say, cool, you want a t-shirt? What do you want on the t-shirt? You want a penguin? They would say, we need a penguin and a skateboard or whatever. And I'd say, cool, penguin and a skateboard coming right up. And I would lean on my style to be unique enough that they would get that. Let's say, for instance, a client comes, they're making a website and they want to show the different features of their product of, maybe super fast payments and, the authors are paid immediately, and, maybe it's a thing for books or something for authors of books or something like that. I've found that the most valuable thing I can do at that point is say, let's take a step back here. You probably should have asked, brought me in a little bit earlier. Let's zoom out a little bit more, because yeah, these all seem like they're decent in their isolated instance, but there's not really a through line going through all of this and telling one large story. And that's really important. Basically, I think to simplify that, it's taking a step back as quickly as I can and asking them why, a lot of, what is the soul that you're trying to carry across? Are you looking to be friendly, simple, aggressive, flip the industry on its head? What are the different things that you're trying to do? How is that going to make you stand out and unique? Because every company or client product will say, and probably is, trying to step aside from the industry or, be different in some sort of way. Yeah, discrepancies across, gender, age, race, shape, size, all that stuff is real. I don't notice it because I'm pretty much as privileged as you can get. I'm a straight white dude. Everything is going good for me here in America. I have been fortunate enough that I've always had friends that are all different types of people. But the only way I know that the world is as twisted as it is, especially even in an art industry that you would think would be less so, I know that through my friends. There's a lot of invisible things. No one's saying let's not hire women to draw. No one's saying let's not hire, Asian people to draw. And I think the conversation is too big and broad for me to say all of the micro ways that people suffer. But I think the most tangible ways to recognize it is confidence, probably confidence the most. My no power is huge because I'm I grew up poor. The only thing I really had that I can claim victimhood to is I was very poor growing up. And I shouldn't even overstate that. We were poor growing up. We weren't starving, but we had shitty cars. We were always worried that the landlord was, we didn't have a lot of money. But I had a loving family, everything else that worked for me. I had parents that taught me don't take out a lot of debt. I had a junky car. I didn't buy an expensive fancy car. I didn't go to college. It wasn't super expensive. I was able to manage it. I didn't have a ton of bills. I had a loving home that kept me at home when I went to school, so I didn't flee, I didn't get rent early. Those kinds of things I think add up to the no power that I had, where I'd be I don't want to take that project, or I can work crazy hours and stay on my computer all day because I don't, have a baby that I have to take care of, or I don't have, and if I lost a project because I was sticking up for myself, it'd be all right, whatever, I don't care, I don't have a ton of rent. I think the art world's over, and then when I say the art world, my specific world of, design, art, illustration, I think over romanticizes hustle culture and those kinds of things, and you have to, bleed, I know that we talked about me being very hustle forward, but I've never thought anybody else should do that. It's just my own insanity. There are things that affect marginalized people as in a secondhand way of, it's very secretive. There's a lot of gatekeeping, a lot of secrets kept. I think transparency is not enough. It's a very opaque industry. People don't know how much you're supposed to be charging for things. People don't know they don't even know about licensing artwork. They don't know about all these different things that I think the first person to find out about those things will probably be, white guys. So as a result, I think marginalized people are affected by that. There's advice on how to make art and use these color palettes and do these kinds of things. But I think if you're feeling you don't have the, the time, the skill, the confidence, you can always make something. You don't have to share it with anyone. You will probably find that you're met on the internet, which is a tricky thing to say because there's a lot of nonsense out there, but if you're in the right areas, usually people are happy when you're making something positive and cool. The more you share, the more you go. You might end up having to have thick skin, but the advice is to make things that you feel good about and share them online. I think finding out where to share them is important. I think walking into Kmart with your painting about something that's maybe kind of visceral, it's going to fall on deaf ears, or it's going to be met with turmoil. But if you go to a certain subreddit or whatever, you find these different types of communities that are interested in it, there's a good way to do it. So I think, again, it comes down to community. Finding the right communities is a good way to start. You can start small, it doesn't have to be anything crazy, but I think making things is always going to be helpful. You can never really go wrong with that. If you think that you're not good at an artist, like, take it from me, I had no idea what I was doing, don't know how to draw. I don't say that with like any sort of coded, like, oh, I can't draw. I can make good images. I make very nice images. I will admit that. I love the images that I make. I do not feel like I draw really well. It does not come out naturally, and it does not come out quick. Over time, it has gotten quicker, and the only thing that I've learned to trust is the process itself. Every time I'm in the middle of a project, I'm like, uh-oh, I'm gonna have to give the client their money back because I ain't gonna be able to figure this out. This color, like, nothing's working. And then the only thing I can do is look back at the last project. I'm like, oh, I felt this way right around halfway last time too, and I made it through. And I've done that for 10 years. And so I trust the process, but it's never a pretty process. Don't worry if your process is pretty. It's not to be pretty. There was a point in between when a couple friends would kind of start telling me, like, dude, it's not really cute anymore to be working as much as you are. You don't need to be, but I think you're trying to prove your value to yourself with hours. You graduated, you're ready to like not work like a psycho anymore. It's okay if you go to sleep at 10. And that was a weird adjustment for me because it did feel like I'm not deserving of any success unless I'm dying for the work. And I would say only maybe a year or two ago, I really started like, it wasn't a matter of intentionally working less, it was just not working more if I didn't have anything to do. You know, it would be like, hey, I'll go home for dinner and have dinner with my partner. And like, that would be cool. Like, we'll go for an extra walk, or I'll go for a skate in the middle of the day. I would love to see people come upon that conclusion quicker than I did. I was stuck with like, my love language is work, my love language is hours put in at the desk, and like, look at all I'm doing for everybody else in the world. Wasn't true. Everyone was like, dude, we just want you to be happy. Like, we just want you to like, so it's been an interesting twist. To summarize though, it's a lot of hours, and I think those hours are deserving and pay off. Today, it's much different, you know, and I'm very sprinty, so I might go crazy for a week, but then I'll take a week off. On average, it's probably about an aggressive 40 hours that can turn into 60 and sometimes can totally be 20. The other thing I'll say to that is I never feel like I've had a job. I work a lot, but I like working. I don't like having a job. I don't ever want to have a job. I don't feel like I have a job. I just work a lot. But what else is there? Like, I like working. It's fun. I'm just like drawing pictures. So yeah, I don't know. Hey, my name is Kirk Wallace. I'm an illustrator focusing on character design for commercial clients.